values.
Spirit says do. You got to do, and that spirit says do. Do 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 do, do, and that spirit says do.
You got to do when the Spirit says do. You've got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you've got to do. Oh,
Spirit says groove.
You gotta be grooving, you gotta be
You've
grooving.
got to groove when the Spirit says groove.
You have got to groove.
When the Spirit says groove, you've got to groove, oh Lord. You've got to groove when the Spirit says groove.
Says groove.
Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove. Spirit says groove.
You got to rock when the Spirit says rock. You got to rock when the Spirit says rock. When the Spirit says rock, you got to rock, oh Lord. You got to rock when the Spirit says rock. 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 Spirit says rock.
Check it. Yo, I had to crawl before I walk, and now I do the 1-2 step. I heard the Spirit and it said the groove, yeah. That's why I do my own shuffle, tapping feet, clapping hands. If you could talk, you could sing. If you could walk, you could dance. Spirit told me bless the track with the vocals, and I come around your city rocking with the locals. Fading out, got my eyes closed. I think the Lord talking to me, gotta get up all in my zone. Candle gazing after doing Kundalini. I wrote it in my journal, trying to find the true meaning. It ain't gonna happen overnight, I really ain't stressing. I'ma get the blessing. I don't need Google directions, I just follow Spirit. I think I start to hear it. The elders talk about alignment, I just started getting near it. Walk along the path, with or without a clue. When the Spirit says do, I make it do what it do. Come on.
Do when the Spirit says do.
Oh yeah.
You got to do.
Y'all know what it's like when the Spirit says do. I mean, you just gotta do what it do. I know right now some Spirit talking to you inside and it's telling you to do something. And whatever that is, go with it, alright? Spirit says do. Spirit says do. Spirit says do, and you know what? I'ma do what I do. You go ahead and do what you do. And that's how we gonna do what we do. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, baby. Hey, 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 hey. Oh yeah.
Greetings and welcome to Mount Vernon Unitarian Church. I'm the Reverend Christian Schmidt. I'm the interim minister of this congregation. Whether this is your first time with us or your 1001st, know that you are welcome here and that we are glad to have you. Though safety issues prevent us from gathering together in person right now, we're glad we can provide this forum to find comfort and recommit ourselves to the mission of supporting one another in our spiritual journeys, working for justice, caring for the earth, and building the common good. We gather to recommit ourselves to dismantling systems of oppression and injustice. As part of that, we acknowledge that we are living and worshiping on land that belonged to the Piscataway and Doeg peoples. It is good to be together. I have a couple exciting announcements, and they are both about gatherings that we can be in person for. The first is that on November 7th at 4 p.m., we'll hold the second of our outdoor worships. November 7th, 4 p.m. on the terrace behind the chapel. The other is that with guidance from our COVID task force, the board has decided to have in-person and live-streamed worship starting on November 21st. We have a bunch of people and groups working to make this happen, and it might be that something forces us to push that date back a week or two, but we're optimistic that on November 21st at 10 a.m. we will have people in the chapel, and you can watch live stream online. You'll have both options. So look for more details about that and consider whether you want to be here in person that Sunday or watching live on your device. For the service today, we ask you to turn off your cameras and Zoom so that we can all focus on looking at the service. Afterwards, we'll invite you to turn your cameras on so that we can see each other and give a virtual hug and wave. And lastly, please continue to look to all our communications methods, emails, phones, website, for continued updates about worship and other church happenings during this time. Know if you are ever in need, The church staff is just an email or phone call away. I invite you now to take a deep breath with me as we enter into this time of worship, when we'll consider cancel culture and what we owe to one another.
We light our chalice this morning, remembering that life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mystery of this great gift.
Would you join me in singing When the Spirit Says Do, 1024 in your teal hymnals, 1024, When the Spirit Says Do. We'll be singing do, sing, dance, and laugh. You got to do when the Spirit says do. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you gotta do, oh Lord. You gotta do when the Spirit says do. 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 You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. When the Spirit says sing, you gotta sing, oh Lord. You gotta sing when the Spirit says sing. 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 You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. When the Spirit says dance, you gotta dance, oh Lord. You gotta dance when the Spirit says dance. 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 Yeah, you gotta laugh when the Spirit says laugh. You gotta laugh when the Spirit says laugh. When the Spirit says laugh, you gotta laugh, oh Lord. You gotta laugh when the Spirit says laugh. Spirit says laugh, oh yeah. Spirit says laugh. Spirit says laugh, oh my. Spirit says laugh. Spirit says laugh. Spirit says laugh. Spirit says laugh.
Let us join our voices in the covenant found on the screen and in your heart.
Love is the teaching of this church.
The quest of truth is its daily task, and service is its prayer.
To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom.
To serve life in community, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony.
This is our covenant with each and with all.
Our Time for All Ages today talks about resilience. I just wanted to take a second to explain what resilience is. It means the ability to keep coming back even after hard things, to bounce back from difficult times. So when we talk about resilience, we mean the things that give us strength to keep going. I hope you enjoy today's Time for All Ages. Our Time for All Ages today is a little bit of a recipe. It's written by my friend, the Reverend Margaret Weiss. Now, this recipe has been tweaked over time, so you can adjust it as is necessary for you. And it never ends up quite the same any one time we do it anyway, so it's okay. Sometimes it yields more servings than you thought it might, and sometimes it needs a little bit more of this ingredient or that. It comes from all the generations that have gone before us, and we've added our own flavors along the way. This is a recipe for resilience. Now to start, we take 1 part courage, 2 parts tears of failure and doubt. We'll add in 1 part deep listening, and then 1 part each of both silence and laughter. There's a dash of trust, a pinch of wonder, and a heaping scoop of naps and snacks. Now we'll mix this together a little bit just to get it started. And then earlier, I combined in this bowl our family, our friends, those who challenge us to be our best selves, and even those with whom we disagree. So now I add slowly from our first bowl into the second, little by little, mixing it together. Now, as with many recipes, one of the tricks to this is that once you've put it together, you have to let it be. It has to prove. It needs time to do its thing. And so we're going to let it do its thing, and I'll be back in just a moment. All right, so while you were away, we did it, let it do its thing. It proved, it had time to come together. I shaped it, I put it on a pan, and now it's been cooking. You have to cook it at an even temperature, not too hot, but warm enough to make things happen. It has to be just right, and just for the right amount of time, and the only way to know that for sure is to check on it from time to time and make sure things are going well. Let's take a look. Oh, it looks so good. Now this can be served warm like it is right now, or at room temperature, or even cold if you need to. You can serve it alongside your favorite soft blanket, dog, cat, or other soft item. You make it often, you share with others, and hold on to leftovers. You'll need them after a long day that challenges your soul. Thank you so much for listening and for cooking with me today. This has been a recipe for resilience.
Mount Vernon Unitarian Church continues to share the plate with committed organizations that you, our members, have chosen. During the month of October, our offering is being shared with Frog Pond Early Learning Center. Frog Pond is an inclusive, nonprofit early learning center with a science and nature focus that is dedicated to working families. They provide a nurturing and empowering environment that promotes the healthy social and emotional development of children from 16 months to pre-kindergarten. I invite this gathered community to offer whatever you are most comfortable with in the spirit of financial generosity for the mission of our church community. If you would like to write and mail a check for the offering, please make it out to MVUC and in the memo line indicate how you would like it to be used. You can also follow the link in the chat box to make a one-time or recurring payment. During this time of music, we invite you to tenderly name in the chat or in your heart the joys and sorrows that you hold within your heart.
I invite you to prepare yourself for our time of prayer and quiet reflection. Take a moment to get all those wiggles out, to get yourself comfortable where you're seated, and prepare yourself for this time. We'll begin with some moments of silence. Our prayer today is a blessing called A Blessing for Risk Takers and Failures by the Reverend Robin Tanner. She writes, "Today we share in a blessing for losers, risk takers, all failures far and wide. Blessed are they who fall in the mud, who jump with gusto and rip the pants, who skin the elbows and bruise the ego. For they shall know the sweetness of risk. Blessed are they who make giant mistakes, whose intentions are good but impact has injured, who know the hot sense of regret and ask for mercy. For their hearts will know the gift of forgiveness. Blessed are they who have seen a D or an F or a C or any letter less than perfect, who are painfully familiar with the red pen and the labels as less than. For they know the wisdom in the imperfect. Blessed are they who try again, who dust off, who wash up, who extend the wish for peace, who return to sites of failure, who are dogged in their pursuit. For they will discover the secret to dreams. Blessed are they who refuse to listen to the naysayers, for their hearts will be houses for hope. Blessed are they who see beyond the surface of another, for they will be able to delight in the gift of compassion. Blessed are they who stop running the race to help a fellow traveler, who pick up the fallen, who stop for injured life, for they shall know the kindness of strangers. Blessed are they who wildly, boldly abandon winning, for they shall know the path of justice. Amen. Our reading today comes from the writer Adrienne Marie Brown. It's an excerpt from We Will Not Cancel Us and Other Dreams of Transformative Justice. She writes, I have a vision of movement as sanctuary, not a tiny perfectionist utopia behind miles of barbed wire and walls and fences and tests and judgments and righteousness, but a vast sanctuary where our experiences as humans who have experienced and caused harm are met with centered, grounded invitations to grow. In the sanctuary we feel our victory, where winning means a mass and intimate healing. Where winning isn't measured by anyone else's loss, but by breaking cycles of abuse, harm, assault, and systemic oppression. Where winning is measured not just by the absence of patterns of harm, distrust, and isolation, but by the presence of healing and healthy interdependence. Where we are skilled at being honest, setting and honoring boundaries, giving and receiving apologies, asking for help for changing our behaviors. Where every day we can access the feeling of ease in our guts and calm in our jaws and shoulders. Where we have trust deep enough to grow from conflict. Trust that good intentions can yield good practice and radically reduce, even eliminate, harm. Where we trust that we are in such regular practice that we no longer have to be vigilant to police or punish within our communities. Holding this vision inside of movements right now has meant feeling not just for what is punitive, but for where there is gleeful othering, revenge, or punishment of others, particularly when these things deepen our belonging to each other, usually briefly, until we too mess up. It means paying attention to where we feel and or practice policing and surveillance outside of the state. It has meant longing for more collective clarity on what we mean by conflict, what we mean by harm, what we mean by abuse. We need to get more precise about the language we use collectively. It has meant listening for what healing is needed and how we can become a generation that learns to be satisfied in our healing. It has meant slowing down our initial collective reactions such that violence is not met with more violence, but with alternative and satisfying consequences that result in the reduction of harm. It has meant feeling for what is out of alignment with abolition, for what feels like transformative justice, for what feels like radical love in action. In order for our movements to be rooted in love, we need to be able to have conversations as survivors, thinkers, workers, shapers of the future, where all our experiences can feed our learning. Abolition is the idea that resonates the most to me, both as a survivor who wants to break cycles of harm, and as a human who wants to belong to my species, to my planet, to my time in the journey of evolution. It is our time and responsibility to try something else. By now, I'm guessing most of us have heard of cancel culture. It's a new-ish term for a very old practice. That is when people do something unpopular, often inappropriate, and don't want to face consequences for doing so. The new thing is that they instead cry that cancel culture is out to get them. Their free speech is being impinged upon. People just don't like them. I should explain more. It's usually when a celebrity or politician says or does something controversial, and here controversial could mean anything from committing an actual crime to saying a racist term or to espousing white supremacist viewpoints or misogynist ideas, or the list goes on for a while here. And then people say that they're done supporting that person or done buying their work, etc. And that famous person claims they've been canceled, that their free speech rights have been taken from them, that this tendency to sideline them is both unfair and unmerited. And that's when we hear the term cancel culture. That is, we have all decided the person should be canceled, should no longer exist, or I don't know. Now, is this really what happens in these situations? No, of course not. Or rather, it's only part of the story. Yeah, you have a right to free speech in this country, but that means something different than what most people think it does. It means the government, with very rare exceptions, cannot punish you for what you say. But it doesn't mean everyone else has to like what you say. It certainly doesn't mean you won't face consequences for what you say. It doesn't mean you get to keep your job or your livelihood no matter what awful thing you've said or done. Those of us who have been around a while have seen this show before. It was called Political Correctness then. It was called a Red Scare a few decades before that. Political correctness, or PC, was the last made-up term for people who didn't want to face consequences for their offensive behavior and language. There's nothing new under the sun. So why does this matter? Well, in a word, consequences. We live in a deeply interconnected world in which all our actions have consequences, both for ourselves and for others. So if we do something wrong, whether we meant to or not, my kids try that one all the time. It was an accident. I didn't mean to. It's not my fault. Well, friends, if you keep making the same accident over and over, at some point it really is your fault. One way this is often expressed is that impact matters more than intent. The way my words were heard matter more than what I meant them to say. And I need to adjust to that reality. Your feelings about what you wanted to do matter less than the harm your action has caused. I didn't mean to hurt you is less important than the fact that you were hurt. Because if we do something wrong, we should face consequences. In part just so we can do better next time. You should learn from your mistakes, and consequences help with that learning. Now, not all consequences, before someone starts diving too deep into psychology and behavior. I know that some consequences are both unhelpful and actually harmful. But that's a whole nother sermon or a book or a library. Because the thing is, there are real examples of canceling, and we don't have to go too far. I already mentioned the anti-communist, or I should say suspected communist, blacklists of the 1950s, in which hundreds of entertainers were denied work because of either real or imagined ties to communism. There's the systematic denial of opportunities to Black people and other racial groups in this country that comes to mind. Jackie Robinson was the first Black baseball player in the major leagues, but there were many, many before him who were effectively canceled, prevented from those opportunities to play in the major leagues where they would have made more money and fame. We could come up with almost limitless examples of this. But I think the way to know whether canceling is real when someone claims they've been canceled is to do this. Ask who is doing the canceling. Is it someone who has a lot of power? Is it the government, ours, or someone else's? Then it might be real canceling. The entertainment professionals in the 1950s weren't making this up. They faced real and undeserved consequences for their supposed political leanings or connections. You might be familiar with the blacklisting in the 1950s in part because of John Henry Falk from my native hometown of Austin, a radio personality and writer who sued a corporation that had worked to blacklist him, ultimately winning and breaking the power of the blacklist in the early 1960s. That's what canceling, to the degree that term applies at all, truly is. But if the canceling you're experiencing is the result of large groups of people, we might say the public as a shorthand, then it's not canceling, it's just that most people don't agree with you. You can either decide whether that matters enough for you to change or it doesn't. When the comedian Louis C.K. is canceled because of inappropriate sexual behavior, and I'm being vague there because it was some pretty ugly stuff, he isn't canceled, it's just that people and corporations don't want to be associated with him. I note too that he's already on the comeback trail. So clearly whatever cancel culture is supposedly doing, it's not having the effect that these entertainers claim it is. If fans aren't interested in what you're offering because of your actions, that's not canceling. That's the free market making a decision about you. Business people in our society love the market until suddenly it's not working for them, I've noticed. And another thing, if you're in the media or still have your huge Twitter following or whatever else to spread the idea that you've been canceled, well, you haven't actually been canceled. People who have truly been canceled don't get on the TV or in the news. Again, Ask all of those who were blacklisted in the 1950s, some of whom never worked in the entertainment industry again, or not for years. So if it's not cancel culture, what are we doing? And more importantly, what should we be doing? My argument today, as evidenced by the title of the service, is that cancel culture is not real. But consequence culture certainly is, and I would argue it should be. You should face consequences for your behavior, good or bad. Consequences, or to use a different term, feedback, is how we live in society. How do we negotiate the often difficult web of relationships in our lives? As I alluded to earlier, there's a whole field of work about what effective consequences are. Rewards and punishment, positive, negative reinforcement, etc. And I'll confess, I'm only the tiniest bit aware of that and not remotely qualified to talk about what constitutes effective consequences. But I know that in our world, consequences are rarely fair and often ineffective, so that I know we can do better. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about our justice and incarceration systems here too, which are wildly unfair and inequitable and racist. The people who face the most severe consequences are disproportionately Black, other people of color, immigrants, LGBTQ people, and poor people. And it should be noted the prison system is generally failing terribly at what we're often told is its mission of rehabilitation. A real consequence culture has to be fair and equitable and effective. Now, in our congregation, in our congregations, we go a step farther. Yes, we have expectations, we have consequences, and most importantly, we articulate those in what we call covenant, or covenants, usually. We think it's important to be clear about expectations. Here we have a way of treating one another. We are open and accepting, but not of intolerance. You can think a lot of things and be a member of our congregation, and we do, but you can't think that some people are innately more worthy or deserving than others. You can't actively work to oppress others, and we call you to think about the ways your actions directly or indirectly contribute to systemic oppression, because it's often so subtle and insidious, and none of us are truly innocent. Covenant requires not just expectations of how we will act, but expectations of how we will act when we have failed. It calls us to remain in relationship, to acknowledge the hurt we have caused, to attempt to heal that hurt, and to know that we will have to do that process over and over because we are humans and we will fail from time to time. Covenant asks and requires more of us, but not more than we are capable of. It offers support too. We support each other. We have a framework to return to covenant. We have the love of others always around us, wanting the very best for each. So friends, know this, cancel culture is just a talking point for people who don't want to face usually richly deserved consequences. Instead, we're called to do better, to consequence culture, and even to the degree that's possible in our various communities, to covenant culture. We're called to do more. We can do it. May it be so.
Sing This Little Light of Mine, 118 in your teal hymn, gray hymnal.
Let it shine.
Will you join me as we unite our voices to recite the words to extinguish our chalice, words known within our hearts and can be found displayed upon your screen? We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Friends, all of us, each of us, is capable of so much more. I'm glad to be in covenant with you as a member of this community. May we support one another, may we love one another, and when we fail, may we return to relationship. Our worship has ended, and our service begins.